Hello, Blazers. Welcome to episode 124 of UAB Green and Told, original debut Monday, May 20th, 2024. Through this podcast, we're able to share stories from members of the UAB community. Want to listen to previous episodes? Check us out at alumni.uab.edu/greenandtold on Spotify or the Apple Podcast app. While there, leave a written review. That'll help other alums find us. I'm Greg Berry, a UAB alum and Director of Communications in the Office of Alumni Affairs. Christopher Perry's family seemingly bleeds green and gold. Despite his passion for the Blazers, however, it took Chris a while to find UAB as a student himself. His story actually begins as a police officer in Fultondale, and as he'll reveal, his becoming a cop maybe came close to not even happening.
As it turned out, during that time, there was a burn ordinance because it was a drought. And this fire had went up and basically smoke was everywhere. And the police came out and they saw us.
But after a career in law enforcement, he'd make a drastic change, one that took him into the classroom.
I always was, interested in history. I always loved a good mystery. I mean, I was a detective for a while, so it makes sense that I wanted to investigate things and figure stuff out. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect because I always loved history.
Plus, while it may have taken a while for him to find UAB as a student, he'll share what the experience has meant to him.
Well, when I came here, my entire outlook changed because not only did I see, where I had been, I saw the potential of where I could go.
If you think your energy level is high, you've got to meet Christopher Perry. As a counselor in the Honors College at UAB and a history instructor, he blows his students away with his engaging and infectious personality. While students may be surprised with that energy when they set foot into his office or classroom, if you knew him as a kid in Fultondale, it isn't so far-fetched.
Oh, I was a little rambunctious, I'll say. I tended to get in a little bit of trouble. Running around doing stuff I shouldn't do, it was a different time, growing up in the 70s and 80s. And, it was kind of like the Wild West, really. But I love playing sports. Football was my game. I always either wanted to be a football star or a movie star. And neither one of them really turned out for me. I wasn't talented enough for football, and the movie thing just never panned out.
That is interesting. And based off of your history, cops and robbers had to have been in there somewhere too, right?
Yes, definitely.
I grew up in the same generation, and playing cops and robbers was big. Everybody wanted to kind of, be a cop when they grew up. That was one of the things that they wanted to do. Athletes starring in a movie and cops and robbers. You kind of went that route for a while in your career. What led to that decision?
So it was one of those things that I had some interesting interactions with law enforcement growing up.
Okay.
And it was leading up to that got me really interested in criminal justice. And I figured that this would be a good direction for me because I really, I used to love cowboy movies and stuff growing up, and I would see, watch Gunsmoke and Marshall Dillon and all this stuff. And it was like, this seemed like something I would really enjoy doing. Now, what really turned out to be interesting for me is that the helping people turned into the best thing you can ever do. Putting folks in jail, that's great. I get, catching the bad guys. But actually where you really get your rewarding, outcome is helping people and seeing, that they truly appreciate what you're doing. And that was really very rewarding for me in my law enforcement career.
You said something that was very interesting to me, that you had some interesting run-ins with the police. Do you care to elaborate and share a little bit?
Sure. Yes, I can. All right. So I was one summer, we a bunch of us went up to Burger King parking lot in Gardendale, Alabama. That's where everybody hung out. It was a summertime and we were, a little restless. We went up there and we borrowed money around the parking lot to, let's say, purchase some things we shouldn't purchase, maybe adult beverages as young people. And we went out in the woods and we built this big bonfire. We were out in the woods, just going to spend the night out there. And as it turned out, during that time, there was a burn ordinance because it was a drought. And this fire had went up and basically smoke was everywhere. And the police came out and they saw us. There was this rope swing that we were swinging on back and forth. And I'll never forget them come out of the woods. And here they are. And we said, who's that? And they said, who do you think it is? And they had this lot, and we saw the badges. And they're like, oh, no. And so they took us in to the police department. Now, I knew some of these guys because my father was pretty helpful in Fultondale growing up.
Okay.
So he worked at the park, and he did different things. They named a field after him, Perry Field in Fultondale. So he was very helpful. So we were sitting there in the police station, and we thought we were in a lot of trouble. But luckily, they called well, not really luckily, but they called our parents. And I would have rather spent the night in jail than to, have my dad come pick me up at the police station. But that was, yeah. And they were great guys. I mean, it was one of those things that, it's a good memory now, but was terrifying in the middle of it.
As a youngster and you have that happen to you, do you automatically go, oh crap, maybe law enforcement isn't in my cards because this just happened to me?
Yes. And it really, I thought, well, it's never going to happen. And as it turned out, so right out of high school, I was going to go in the Marine Corps because I figured, this was my chance to get out. Right. So I went, and I was literally in the recruiting office, sitting there with I remember the guy's name. His name was Sergeant Davis was the guy's name. And I was about to sign on the dotted line. And my dear grandmother, Granny, she calls the recruiting office, and she says, and they said, she called and asked for me. And these guys come around and said, are you Chris Perry? I said, yeah. So you have a phone call. I said, what? A phone call? So, because we have cell phones back then. So This was like 1989. And so I went and I said, yeah. And hello. And it was Granny. And she said, don't sign. You're going to sign your life away. Don't do it. I'll pay for you to go to school. And I'm like, okay. So I said, all right. So I told Sergeant Davis, I'm sorry, I got to go. And, I left, and she paid for me to go to Jeff State, which is another story entirely. But literally, she saved me. I tell people this because it's true. She saved me from the first Gulf War, because if I would have enlisted that day, I would have ended up in the first Gulf War. But Granny saved me from war. Now, it was a short war, but still, it was a war nonetheless.
It's funny how things happen, in your background and everybody's background. And that, you say, saved you. You mentioned she was going to pay to have you go to Jefferson State, but I don't believe you even got a degree from there. You wound up getting a degree from Wallace State.
Yes, I did. Yes. I majored in, just to be straight with you, I majored in beer and girls at Jeff State, and it didn't go very well for me. And it took me a little while to figure out, I got to change my direction with higher education. So I looked at Wallace, went up there and got really serious about it, graduated with honors with an associate's degree in criminal justice. And then shortly after that started my journey in law enforcement.
So what changed between Jeff State and Wallace State that kind of had you more focused on education?
I think I was just growing up. I think that, I had a kind of a restless youth, I guess. And then I got to a point where, I need to do something with my life here because, I had spent all this time doing all, and it was great. I had a great upbringing. It was a lot of fun, but it got to a point where I need to be an adult now. I need to do something and go forward. And that's really kind of, I bared down and got serious about, studying and doing the right things. And I ended up getting the degree, and it's sort of, I'm glad it happened the way that it did, because, it could have went either way. And I'm glad it went the way it did, because it turned out really well for me.
And you wound up graduating with honors, and you became a police officer. And I think the first stop and only stop was back in your hometown of Fultondale.
Yes, it was. Yes.
What was that like, patrolling the streets that you grew up on and maybe busting those teenagers that you kind of can relate to?
Yeah, well, it was very interesting because I ended up running into the same people. And it is, they always say the thing in law enforcement, don't ever police in the town you grew up in. And I did that thing. And it turned into, it was good because I knew people knew what they were doing. So it was easy to get information and things like that.
Sure.
But also, people expected to, get a break or, different things like that. And sometimes you can, sometimes, there's certain situations where you can't, and you end up seeing people that you grew up with and they're in a really, kind of a bad situation. And there's not a whole lot you can do about it.
I look at your CV, your resume, and 10 years in Fultondale as a police officer. And then there's this large gap.
Yes.
Talk about what happened, what you were doing at that time to fill that gap. Because knowing you just based off of this conversation, you weren't sitting still.
No, not at all. All right. So it was, so after I was a sergeant, made sergeant, and things were going, I actually signed up to take the test for lieutenant. Things were going really well. So my son was born in May of 2003, and he came into this world 2 months early. He was in a hurry. He was in the NICU for a month, first month of his life. Some interesting things happened during this time frame. So Jesse, my son, he was born early. He was 3 pounds, little guy. We took pictures. I'll never forget, my wife and I took pictures of him, and he just looked so pitiful, but we thought he looked great. And then we look back at that now and we're like, oh gosh, it just, but so he was born early. About 6 days after my son was born, my mother passed away. She died. She had Parkinson's disease, and she had passed away 6 days. She was able to see Jesse with a VHS tape. We took a video and sent it to her took it to her before she passed away. Cheryl, my wife, had complications from the pregnancy, and literally it was this. I mean, I thought she was going to. It was so. It's like, it's funny. You actually you block things out, and you don't remember. But people tell me, or Cheryl has told me, of different things that happened during this time frame, and I have totally don't even remember. But long story short, all this happens, and family becomes extremely important to me. And Cheryl was doing really well. She got her PhD right here at UAB. And she was doing really well. So I married up in the world. So let's just get that out there. So I was able to stay at home and be a stay-at-home father for my kids. Now Maddie comes along in 2008. And so that's what I did. I was Mr. Mom for a while. It's that moment where everything that you know and love is like everything is just turned upside down.
Yeah.
And you come out completely different.
Yeah.
So I was going into it and coming out. I was, it was like everything changed. It was like family is the most important thing for me, and this is what I need to do.
And you spent the time being Mr. Mom, if you will, for quite a while. And then you decided to make a change, and you decided to get back into education, first with school and then becoming an instructor. And you chose UAB. Mm-hmm. Obviously convenient. Your wife is here as well, earning her PhD. But what went into the decision of the route you took with history?
Okay, this is very interesting. All right, so I came back as a more seasoned student, a little bit older. And so I came back and I sat down with Deborah Littleton, who is a fantastic advisor. She's awesome. She advises everybody. And I sat down with her, and I found out that I was literally closer to a history bachelor's than I was to criminal justice. Okay. And I always was, interested in history. I always loved a good mystery. I mean, I was a detective for a while, so it makes sense that I wanted to investigate things and figure stuff out. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect, because I always loved history. And then I said, all right, so I decided I was going to go for the history bachelor's degree. And then I fell in love with it. It was like, this is perfect. It's like you find that thing where it's not work. You absolutely love it. And I'll never forget, I went into my first semester here. I went into ancient Greece class with Dr. Walter Ward, and I was hooked, completely hooked. It was absolutely amazing. And he's a bearded genius, that man. I love him.
What was it like for you? Because you were roughly 2 decades older than most of the students you're with, because you were going for your bachelor's at this time.
I was. And I was a little bit apprehensive because, I'm the old guy. And it was the UAB community, the young people of the adopted me. They literally took me in and made me one of their own. I had a group of people, we call them the history guys, that we run around with. Carl Cotton is one, I got to mention him. Carl Cotton, he invited me to his house. He had this little shindig over there, and he invited me over. And I had these friends, and the community was just, and I fell in love with the place. I mean, it was so cool, and it was like a family, UAB, and I felt comfortable here, and it was literally home. It was so, I didn't want to leave. I mean, I wanted to take, after I got my bachelor's degree, I wanted to take more classes. I tried to talk Cheryl into, now I'm going to get a degree in anthropology, so I just didn't want to leave.
And you didn't leave because you wound up getting a master's as well.
Yes.
In history. Was that an ends to the means because at that point you wanted to teach, or what was the reasoning behind getting the master's?
Yeah, that was it. I wanted to keep going. I wanted to actually, I thought to myself, I love this, and I want to I want to take the next step. And I do want to teach because I got a little taste of it. And in my capstone, I did this project on Atlantis and different things. And it was a lot of fun. And I was able to talk in front of a class. I'm like, this is perfect, And so when I got into the master's program, I was a graduate teaching assistant and got to actually start teaching, and I just loved it. And then, eventually they figured, well, he's not going to leave, just let him teach. And then I started teaching classes, and I just absolutely love it. It's fantastic.
How different is teaching from being a cop?
Oh, it's so much. All right. So I was an instructor when I was in law enforcement, which is interesting because I did pressure point control tactics, and I did defensive tactics for women, and I did all this different stuff. But teaching history is completely different. It is literally the passion that I have for the subject. I just absolutely love it. And they can tell, the students can tell that I absolutely love what I'm talking about, which makes them curious. Because most people, when they think of history, this is boring, it's dates and this, that, and the other. But it's not. It's literally like teaching a reality show. In a way, you get to talk about all these things that have happened. And I want you to understand, and I want you to tell me what you think. That's the biggest thing. Because my version of history may be a little different than yours, and that's okay. We can talk about it and come to a sort of a mutual understanding of things. And it's I think that's the main thing. It's really just, it's the enjoyment of talking about the subject.
What's your favorite course to teach?
I love U.S. history. I started out in ancient history. That was kind of my thing. But I gravitated toward U.S. history. Brian Steele, who is a genius as well. He's like a expert on Thomas Jefferson and the early republic. And I was able to learn from him in grad school. And I fell in love with U.S. history. So I would say now probably, early America. I love talking about that. I also love talking, anything in U.S. history because people are also more familiar with it.
You're also working with the Honors College.
Yes.
What is it like working with these students? Because these are highly engaged, highly intelligent students, and the Honors College on campus just continues to grow.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing. The community it's like literally, I will describe it as like a little liberal arts college in the middle of UAB. And these are fantastic students. They are amazing. It gives me hope for our future when I sit and talk to these students.
I'm going to rewind here because we touched on your wife a little bit. She has a PhD from UAB. How did you meet her, and how many degrees? Is it just the one degree from UAB for her?
Yes. So we met, interestingly, she's from Wisconsin. She got her bachelor's and her master's at the University of Wisconsin La Crosse. Okay. She came across the country to go to UAB. And I met her in court, is where I met my wife. Yes.
All right. Now I'm intrigued. Explain.
So I was working as the bailiff in city court in Fultondale. And she was actually there as a family violence advocate, volunteer type work. And she was there, and I noticed her, and I was actually the magistrate at that time was trying to set me up with another she was a lawyer or something. She says, I want you to meet this person, and I thought she was talking about Cheryl, eventually my wife, but she was talking about somebody else. I'm like, oh no, I want to talk to her, and so we set up a date. We went to Taj India, our favorite restaurant, on our first date, and the rest is history. So
And the rest is history because now you have two kids. One of them is currently a student at UAB. And you have another youngster who most likely will wind up at UAB. What is it about being a Blazer that has just kind of embraced the family as a whole?
It's the community, and we've experienced it. So, I mean, Jesse is here now. He's in his third year. He's in biobehavioral nutrition and wellness, doing great. He loves it. It's the community. And Maddie, also, I should mention, my daughter, Maddie, she will be here whether she knows it or not. She's coming. But no, she's in more to the like visual arts and things. So, sure. Which is a great program here as well. And it's the community at UAB. It's really a family. That's what I try to tell people when we have like when prospective students come to the Honors College. This place is different than anywhere else you're going to go to because the community here is so close knit and it's so diverse. And there's people from all over the world right here in this area. And you learn so much, not only from the classes and the courses that you take, but also the people you meet. And it's just such an amazing community to be a part of. And Jesse's experiencing that now, and Maddie will be too pretty soon, because I absolutely fell in love with the place. And Cheryl has done during her PhD studies in public health. It's just an amazing place to be a part of.
How has UAB at this point shaped who you are? I mean, it's a younger history, for you as opposed to others our age. But yes. How has it shaped you?
Well, I think that the people that I have met, it's basically like I mentioned earlier, when I went into, I came out different after my kids were born, and Jesse was born and he was, early, and my wife was very sick afterwards, and my mother passed away, and it changed me. Well, when I came here, my entire outlook changed because not only did I see, where I had been, I saw the potential of where I could go. And I saw this community and how they just accepted me. And I was like, wow, I'm just this old guy. Nobody, who am I? But they brought me in. I fell in love with the place. And literally from that point forward, I wanted to give back. I literally thought to myself, it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. I wanted to give back to the community, and I wanted to make their experience better as well. And I hope that I'm able to do that now because it's just, I love this place.
Where does this energy come from?
Everybody asks me that. So if we could bottle that, I've always been that way. I don't know where it came from, where I got it, but my DNA, I had a DNA test, interestingly enough. And one of the traits said that I recover quickly from exercise. So maybe that's it. I don't know. Maybe it's the Viking in me or something. I don't. But I absolutely just when I'm passionate about something, I think it comes through. When especially this university, I'm in love with history. My family.
That's Christopher Perry, a two-time College of Arts and Sciences alum with degrees in history. Chris got his bachelor's degree in 2014 and earned his master's in 2016. Today, not only does he teach classes at UAB, he's a counselor in the Honors College. With a great deal of passion for the green and gold, he has a wonderful idea of what it means to be a Blazer.
It's family. It is totally, to me, this place is like my family. I feel that with the students that I deal with and talk to. I still have them contact me years down the road. But I think it's the family. It's literally just knowing that everyone here has your best interest at heart. There's no doubt in my mind. And the people that you meet, I mean, you don't run across somebody that is, it's never a bad experience here for me. It's just, everyone is wonderful.
Be sure to check out past episodes of the UAB Green and Told podcast. Listen in at alumni.uab.edu/greenandtold. Have a story to share or know someone who does? Email greenandtold@uab.edu. Finally, be sure to follow us on social media. Just search UAB Alumni on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks for listening, and until next time, go Blazers.